All right, everybody. I hope you are all well. I am BQ. This is the Negative BQ YouTube channel. This is your Impact Lounge Impact Wrestling review. Against All Odds is on TV as we speak right now. I don't typically review Impact before a TNA Plus show or before a pay per view. I'm doing it specifically because of the Hardy stuff and because I've just got some other things that I want to talk about. A couple uploads ago where I was talking about their summer schedule. I communicated to you guys and I communicated on Twitter as well. I've spent many hours this past week talking with individuals at TNA, and I feel like I kind of got to the bottom of some stuff. I got a side of the story about the Scott Demores and the Lou DeAngelis and all these guys that were, no longer part of the company, that were released, fired, left, whatever the case. Uh, had some pretty in depth conversations, and what I did. So this podcast is going to be a little bit different. I hopped on the Mike and JD show last night. I filled in for JD, and we talked about it. Mike and I talked about it. Told him about things that I was hearing, and trying to help the TNA fan base kind of hear the truth a little bit. Because when we hear something that doesn't make sense to us, it just looks off, it looks wrong, chances are we're not getting the full story. So I'm gonna try my best to give I tried my best to give the other side of the story, not the Meltzer. Like Meltzer doesn't talk to TNA. Meltzer talks to people who were fired from TNA or let go from TNA. Like there's no relationship with the people that are running the company. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna punch that in here in a second. My conversation with Mike, and then we'll punch right back in after that and talk about Impact. And I'll get into a couple other things that we didn't really touch, a couple creative things, uh, stuff we didn't touch on. Um, I'm going to give you the out right now, though. I'm going to give you the out for those of you who don't like the more negative reviews. There's some of you who don't care because you agree with a lot of the things I say, or you don't agree. I mean, you may not agree with what I say, but you respect my opinion on it and why I say I don't like something. But for those of you who just don't really like the negative reviews, I'm giving you the out right now. The reason that I don't watch these go home shows or review them typically is because I think they're the worst episodes of the year. And I stand by that. I did not like this episode. I don't know that I liked anything from the episode. When I go through and review it, I might go back and be like, okay, well, this was cool, but I thought the episode would never end. I thought the matches were long and slow and boring. I thought the acting was bad. So I'm just letting you guys know right now, if you don't want to hear that kind of review from me, when we're done with this portion here where I'm talking with Mike and we're doing some inside shit, talking some inside shit about TNA, you're welcome to punch out. But for those of you who just kind of respect my reviews, respect my opinions on stuff, stick around because I will be talking about a couple other things. So here is my conversation with Mike on the Mike and JD show.
Um, but man, let's go ahead and get into it. You've been hearing a lot of stuff about the inner workings of TNA and kind of like the end of the Scott D'Amore era and what the company might be looking like going forward. Now, look, if you guys are here and you're a TNA doomer and you think TNA is going out of business and if you think TNA is being sold by WWE or sold to WWE, I'm sorry, this is not the podcast for you. And I've been trying to tell you guys for weeks that none of that was happening, that Anthem is absolutely committed to TNA. If they were going to sell it, they would have accepted Scott D'Amore's offer. But they did not. They actually have plans, and those plans just don't involve certain people, and most specifically Scott D'Amore. So, it was what were you hearing about how D'Amore exited and maybe why they moved on from him at that
Well,
point?
first you made a comment about Scott D'Amore's offer, and a lot of people were saying he should have sold. They should have sold to Scott D'Amore. The Scott D'Amore offer was never a thing. It was a thing, but the rumor that went around was that he found out he was getting fired. So then well, no, let me rephrase that. He tried to buy the company. They said no, and then that's what soured things, and then they fired him. Like that's not what it was. It was like a last ditch, like, hey, you're being let go, and then he very quickly try to put together an offer to buy the company to save his own job, in a sense.
Yeah.
Um, the company legally had to hear him out, but it was never a thing. It was never of interest. There's not interest in selling it. They're not selling to WWE. That's just not going to happen. They're very excited about this partnership. Um, I'm not under the impression it's about the talent for them. I don't think they care who. Like for the fans, they're like, hey, who's going to show up from NXT? That's not. You have to think like a business person. Like that's not what they care about. If they can get their talent on WWE, they benefit from that. They don't benefit as much getting NXT talent on their show. Their benefit is the rub from WWE. And I think that's where a lot of the partnership is. Are we going to see some NXT people? Probably. I don't. I just don't. I'm just saying it's not going to be to the extent that people are fantasy booking.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be similar to AEW, whereas like AEW sent Private Party that one time, and then what else did they really do? I mean, obviously Kenny and Christian Cage, they were the champions, so they had to be on the show, but there was no like talent exchange. AEW had no interest in anyone from Impact at the time, so it's going to be a healthier relationship than that. But they're more concerned with the rub from WWE, and they're very pleased with how the battleground uh, angle took place and the match. It was a very added bonus that there was blood involved, because I didn't know where the blood came from watching the match, but it's because Jordan got her earring ripped out. But it did add to the match, and uh, what they were going for was a finish that protected the champion. They said we can't just send our champion on their show to lose. That she has to be protected, but it's someone who has like a business mindset looks at it and says, okay, they were promoting whatever you think about Ash by Elegance. They're promoting Ash and Jordan
Yeah.
and the
Uh,
Slammiversary. That's what they get from it, and
yeah.
people,
Her
go
name
ahead.
on this show is Ash by Awful, by the way.
Yes, Ash by
Yeah.
awfulness. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the few names I don't mess with on my show, but yeah, for the sake of this show, we'll
Yeah.
go, yeah.
Yeah. So back to Scott, and we'll put a bow on the whole Scott Demore story, because I think I've exhausted Scott Demore topics and Scott Demore thumbnails ever since he got fired, and it came out that he was like going to try to buy it and yada yada yada. In your opinion, and from what you're hearing, what do you think ultimately why did the relationship go south? Like, why did they want to move on from him? What was he not doing that they wanted him to do?
So I'm going to be real here, because when you listen to the Meltzers and the Sean Ross Sapps of the world, I'm not saying their information isn't correct, but when they report, they're gonna be like, well, we want to be on good TNA's good side, we want to be on Scott D'Amore's good side, we want to be on this person's good side, or whatever, because that's what they do. I don't give a shit. Scott D'Amore don't know me, I don't know him. He's not gonna DM me after this. My loyalty is to TNA and who I know there. But like the way it's worded to me is that if you're good at your job, you're going to keep your job.
Yeah.
There's a perception that Scott D'Amore was a lot better at his job than he was. Now, he had a great relationship with the wrestlers. You can tell that by on social media. You can tell when they wrote the letter, like they liked Scott. It's not that he was like an unlikable person, but for the people appointed over him, they weren't as happy with his performance as the fans thought they should have been. Now, when he got let go, I was guilty of it. Like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, me
This guy
too.
saved your company. And that's what some of the problems were backstage, was that he was allowing the perception to be that he was single-handedly responsible for the growth, for the excitement, for all the good that was going on. He kind of allowed that perception to be that he was the dude, when in fact there was a team of people. And in the military, dude, like, because we get it the worst. When
Mhm.
you have that supervisor ahead of you, that I'm not saying he did nothing. That's not the picture I'm painting. But the picture that you have, I mean, the picture I'm trying to paint is when you have someone above you that really isn't doing that much work. It's the people underneath them, and then at the end of the day, the recognition goes for that person.
Yeah.
Um, dude, I was on a deployment one time. Uh, it was me and 3 dudes. We had office jobs, and we were busting our ass this whole deployment. Our supervisor couldn't even have done our jobs if we called in sick that day. Like, he didn't know what we did. End of the deployment, this dude gets the medal, and we're just standing there with our dicks in our hands, and clapping for him.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so again, I don't wanna paint a picture Scott wasn't doing anything, but there
Right.
was a team that was really, responsible for a lot of what was going on, but the perception has always been, "Well, Scott Demore is saving this company," and when you do that, you're protecting yourself, so,
Yeah.
eventually he gets let go, and of course, the fans like, "What are you doing? He did all these things," and I was guilty of it. I got in arguments with Twitter. That's one time where the trolls actually get one over on me, the marks, because I had people tell me, Scott's not the only person at the company," and I said, "Well, Scott's the head of the snake. He's everything runs through him," but I was actually wrong with that. That's one, um, but again, I just kind of fell into a perception that they needed Scott, and that, they don't. So it's the company knew they were getting rid of Scott for a long time.
Yeah.
So when these rumors have come out that, well, Scott wanted to spend money and Anthem didn't, that is not true. Um, and it's easy to feel like, well, I mean, it's easy to believe why we thought that was true, because we're watching the show. We're like, yo, it looks like shit. It's looked like shit for a long time. There's people on screen who are horrible characters. Um, so it's easy for us to believe, hey, this, everything runs through this dude. Um, but no, really what it was is that, the company is like, well, we're going to spend money. You're just not going to spend it. They had the vision a long time ago that, but their vision and Scott's division didn't line up. Um, the perception was also that, kind of Scott was the one that's like, hey, we got to get this show looking good. It's got to look like a national televised product. Really, the company felt very stagnant under him because he wasn't making the necessary changes. So when we're sitting here and saying, yo, this show looks horrible on TV, the venues look horrible, the editing looks horrible, they know that. What was making me so mad as a podcaster was like, are they fucking blind?
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case. They knew. These people backstage like, "Hey, this show looks awful." He was the one holding it back from, like, making the necessary changes. So you saw when Scott was let go, all these other people were let go too, from David Sahadi to fucking David Penzer. This was done because the company did not find them good at what they did. And, as fans, again, we're like, "Oh my god, the company's falling apart. They're just getting rid of people and bringing their people in." That's not what it is. They just said, "Hey, we have to bring in better people," and they want to bring in television people who know how to make a show look like a nationally televised broadcast, not like an independent show, which is how it's looked for a really, really long time. I've been saying for like 3 years now, you have to look more like NXT than you do like MLW if you want to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And the company uh believes sorry, I thought this comment was directed at me.
Don't worry about the comments. I'll get to the comments in a little bit. Well,
I know it
I'm
just kinda
saving the
looked down
comments.
for a second. I thought someone
You
was
just
trashing
riff, brother. You just riff.
I'm gonna I thought someone was trashing me for a second. I just looked
Yeah.
down and came across it. But the they knew the changes needed to be made. Scott was not making the necessary changes. Uh and that's kind of what it came down to. And again, he had a great relationship with the wrestlers. Will Ospreay even said Scott Demore single-handedly responsible for the resurrection of TNA. And you can't run a business like that where one guy is responsible, where everyone thinks, where everyone has thankless jobs, and the one guy is taking all the glory for everything, you know. Um, but yeah, it was incorrect in the sense that it wasn't that they were telling Scott no. They said you're just not going to spend our money. And I guess what I was saying before I got distracted there was that they're going to bring in people who know how to make television,
Yeah.
not wrestling people. And that's kind of what people say about Tony Khan, right? Like, stop bringing in your friends, stop putting people in positions with no experience.
Well, and stop bringing in WWE people, and we're gonna get to the AEW thing because I think since Tony Khan has brought in the Kevin Dunn disciples and the Vince McMahon disciples, the show has gotten worse, and I think it looks worse than it did before. Whenever he had his own people, when he had
Yeah,
people with original ideas, and now you see WWE, they brought in Lee Fitting from ESPN, and like the show looks great.
right.
Yeah,
And people knocked WWE for a long time for creatively bringing in people who didn't know wrestling, and it makes sense. Well, they wanted people who knew television, episodic television, and drama. I mean,
yeah,
obviously, you got to throw some wrestling experience in there with some of the creative team, but to people that didn't make sense. And I think TNA is kind of going a similar direction where they're like, we want to make a good television show, and we're gonna make those changes little by little, but we have to get rid of this guy in order to get rid of this guy and this guy and this guy also because he's not doing it. So we're gonna have to do it. It's
yeah,
like the sports franchise who, like, a coach falls in love with a player and they have to trade that player away to get the coach to stop following their, to break that love interest. It was kind of like that, but it was like, hey, we got to get rid of the coach, um, and then we can get rid of the players after that. So, you know, um, that it's just what was worded to me in person and reiterated to me a couple days ago was that if something looks like it doesn't make sense, then you probably didn't get all the information.
yeah,
And that's what it was for us as fans. We said, well, this doesn't make sense that Scott's gone. This doesn't make, why would they just fire him out of the blue? Because we didn't have all the information. Meltzer didn't have all the information. You say it all the time, like Anthem doesn't talk to Meltzer. They don't, they're not talking to Sean Ross Sapp. They're just speculating. But this company is not talking to the fucking dirt sheets. So if something
yeah.
doesn't make
So
sense because we don't have
yeah,
the information.
so Meltzer and Sapp are talking to TNA people, but the Anthem executives, like Leonard Asper and Anthony Ciccone and those other guys, yeah, they're probably not talking, but like other people like wrestlers and staff members that work in TNA, they're absolutely talking to the dirt sheets, and that's why we're not getting like the full picture of Anthem side of it because I thought this whole thing was a disaster, and this show. The television product right now is not great. I will say tonight. I'm pretty sure I watched a little bit of TNA, and I'm pretty sure Tasha Steeles and Danny Luna wrestled at a funeral because the people in the audience were all dead. They might well have been behind tombstones with how quiet they were. So
Wow.
it's been tough. It's been tough at times. So I am a little. I'm actually kind of like I'm cautiously optimistic about some of the news that you're breaking here, especially with them wanting to upgrade the television production because that's been a thorn in my side for years. Because once I stopped just being a guy that watches it on TV and I was watching it every week and analyzing it and doing a podcast, I would notice all these minor details and these mistakes and sometimes huge mistakes that they would make just in their television production, like white balancing the cameras and like, being backstage and like, Gia Miller, like you were always say Gia Miller's got shadows all over her face and looks terrible. Well, Gia Miller, more times than not, the microphone that she's using is fake. It's not a real microphone. The microphone they're using is the camera's microphone. Like the audio is always off and like the live, like the whole production has been trash. And I've been saying forever, like the TV director, Sahadi needs to go because all this is happening on his watch, and now we know why he wasn't gone is because he was being protected by Scott D'Amore. Scott D'Amore is gone, and now Dave Sahadi was no longer safe, and so they ultimately made the decision to get rid of him. And looks like they might have a replacement. I don't know who it is, but they got somebody in mind. It looks like.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. And more people are gonna be gone here soon. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Um, They obviously you can't make all those kind of changes at once, but they're going to make incremental changes for the show to be better. They have Anthem execs at the shows now, and they're trying to help with the production of the show and how do we make this look better, to where before Scott was essentially like blocking those people from being involved. I don't know if it was like a control thing. I don't know exactly, but um, I don't think he had the dedication to how the show looked like the fans thought he did. They thought he was the one that was like, "Hey, we're gonna up the production." That's not what it was. Because remember, they said, "Hey, we're gonna have these production upgrades," and then it just disappeared. People
Yeah.
thought that had to do with Scott Demore being gone. Like, no, Scott was the one who was kind of like blocking that from really happening and really growing. And now that he's gone, those people are now at the shows and they're working with the team and trying to get it, trying to get it to look better. The venues, they're kind of stuck with some of these venues right now, because some of the people they got rid of are the ones that got these venues. But they're going to focus here probably 2025 of venues that are they're gonna look good on television and look, um, as it was worded, like a national television show, not like a super indie. So they're
Yeah.
aware that it looks indie, doesn't look good. We're probably stuck with that for the rest of the year. But then I would say, yeah, because they gave us venues all the way up to Cleveland. I don't know what the Cleveland venue looks like. I have no idea.
I'll just tell you what it looks like. Game Changer Wrestling is running that next month. So,
Okay, okay.
yeah, that kind of tells you exactly what that's going to look like on television.
All right. I think it was probably I think it was already booked, but
Yeah.
that's kind of I believe that's what is worded to me is like next year they're gonna try to make just run some venues that just look better on TV.
Yeah, because right now they're booking a lot of older venues and indie venues and a lot of the venues that ECW was running, which makes sense because Lou D'Angeli was in charge, and so he's booking old ECW venues. And I think Gerard in the chat said something to the effect of the new guy that they have right now, and it says his name is Greg Bagarosi, Greg Bag of Donuts.
Like a donut. Oh, dude,
He's
that's the military name right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's doing it right now. He was a former ECW and an MLW guy. I don't know that that guy is like the long-term replacement. So I think eventually they're going to have like a full team in place. Now I theorized this, last week or a couple weeks ago. What are you hearing as far as like TNA and Invicta kind of being involved more often and maybe even having either maybe not if the same production and live events department but working together more?
God, I didn't ask a whole lot in regards to that. It's not going to be the same production team. I'm under the impression it's just going to be Anthem will be more heavily involved in the TNA side of production. So that's just kind of what was uh, the way that it was explained to me. I didn't really ask much about Ivica and their deal and all that. If I'm being honest, I don't care about them. I know like a lot of TNA fans do. I see it all the time in our chats. People like, Invicta this and this. Like, I give fucking two shits about them. So that's why I
Yeah.
didn't really like dig too deep into it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Now, Full Sail University is something that's been kind of being tossed out there for a couple of months now. And last week, Meltzer said that deal was all but dead because of Lou D'Angeli being fired, and Lou D'Angeli was the point man. But he did end the sentence by saying that the people in the company still have a glimmer of hope that deal was still alive. And then Sean Ross Sapp on Sunday night after Battleground was saying kind of some of the stuff that you're saying with like, hey, like no, it's not, like TNA is not going anywhere. They're not selling. They're not going out of business. He was saying that on that podcast, but he said that they're looking at moving to a fixed location like relatively soon, and maybe even I can't remember exactly what he said, but kind of what you've been hinting at, like a fixed location and things looking a lot better in 2025. What do you think about Full Sail University? Is that even still on the table, or did that die with Scott with Lou D'Angeli?
Um, I don't have information in that. I will say I don't believe it is a dead thing.
Yeah.
I don't. That the vibe I'm got is not that I have is that it's not dead, but it's very tight-lipped regarding that. That could be for the good, good could be for bad. I just know it's the whole situation is really tight-lipped. And one of the things that I'm trying to help them communicate to the fans is that um, everything was again, I'm going to go back to what I said in the beginning. Everything was not Scott. So, again, I'm guilty of it. When Scott was gone, I was like, there goes the relationship with WWE. I said that. Um, Scott did not set up Jordan Grace to wrestle at Battleground. This it was the current, uh, the current Anthem guys who made this happen. Like they are fostering their own personal relationships. It's not like, hey, Scott's gone, so AAA, New Japan, like I think you had kind of talked about it, like, well, there goes AAA. Like that's actually not the case. It's just on hold because there's so many changes going on right now. But we'll see those partnerships again down the road. But this current team is fostering all these relationships, and they are getting out and doing these things. But again, the perception was Scott, Scott, Scott. Scott was the guy, and nothing operates without Scott, and that's just not the case. When Battleground happened, uh, who was there?
It
Doctor
was
Ariel. Uh,
it was a Chon Chon, and it was Ariel Schnerer and
right.
Jonathan Gresham. So it's pretty funny because Gresham actually and Gail Kim, and Gresham actually posted the picture on Twitter, and he deleted it. But because I am quick, I made sure to nab that photo before he deleted it, and I was able to post it because Chon Chon looks like a mob boss. So I was like,
Yeah.
if Jordan, I had to make my joke that if Jordan Grace loses, someone's getting whacked. Um, so I made that, and then but he ended up deleting the tweet, and I think it's because Anthem execs don't want to be seen like as being the faces of the company. They just want the company to be the face of the company. If that makes any sense.
Correct. And that is what I tell you exactly. That is why the tweet came down. They specifically did not want to be on screen. Um, the belief is that Scott Demore would have wanted to be on screen, or whoever was there with him would have said, some of these guys they got rid of. If they were there with him, the belief is that, hey, we want to be on screen, we want to be recognized, we made this happen. Like I've said on my podcast, this company is faceless. I wouldn't recognize any of these Anthem guys if I walked past them on the street. I thought that was a bad thing. Uh,
Yeah.
it's actually a good now that my perspective is changing. I'm seeing it's a good thing because they don't want the focus to be on them. They're not trying to get themselves over, which is what I said about Scott. I said it about um, Don Callis. I was like, these guys, they're on screen and they're trying to get themselves over. We saw Scott do it at the expense of the talent all the time. Anthem did not want Scott on TV.
That was my next question.
Right.
So yeah, so they because I found it to be hilarious that within a couple of months after him being promoted to TNA president, because for the most part he was the executive vice president, and Ed Nordholm was the president, and then Scott gets promoted to TNA president, and next thing you know, he's an on-air authority figure. He has booked himself in the co-main event of the biggest pay-per-view of the year in his hometown, and he wins.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and yeah. So
He's
what
hitting
did they think of Scott being on television?
yeah, and he's hitting Canadian destroyers and because you notice when Scott was on TV, he was always putting himself over. He had the snarky comments, um, with the exception of him going through the table, which happened twice because they failed to use the proper fluid to light it on fire the first time. The first angle was with the good hands and Bubba Ray. They put him through a table. They completely fucked the angle up, so they had to reshoot it later with Macklin, and when they actually put him through a fiery table. Uh, but with the exception of those moments, Scott always got over. Like he was always, you remember a wrestler would come up and talk to him, and he just started telling jokes and oh, well, you're in the main event tonight. You know what? You're in a street fight, haha, and then walks away, always leaving the heels looking like freaking goofs. But they weren't a fan of Scott on screen. That was why Santina was brought in was uh, to transition him off screen. Because of course that coincided with him going through the table. Uh,
Mhm.
but then he ended up right back on, and then we had two authority figures, and it made no. There's my dogs. I'm sorry. I'm so
It's
sorry.
it's yeah. It's all good.
One of the cats walking in front of him. Da, 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 da. So I was saying they distracted me there for a second. Um, but he's always getting himself over, and they
And they
had
had two authority figures. So
authority figures.
Santino was brought in to replace Scott as an on-screen authority figure, and then Scott found his way back onto TV, and Anthem was
Right.
probably pretty upset with that.
Yeah, and now you got two, and we're watching on TV. It looks ridiculous. We're like, who the hell's in charge? Um, Gail Kim didn't want to do it. It looked like obviously it would have been much better. People would have taken to her much better if she was on
Yeah,
screen as the authority figure. But
but BQ BQ. Here's a thought. How about now? Hear me out. No authority figure. You don't have one. You just have Tom Hannafin announce that TNA executives have made the following match. Like you can do a wrestling show without an authority figure on screen.
you can, but I mean, I remember back in the Tessa Blanchard days, she's always like, I talked to Impact Management, and there's no face to it. I just feel like you have to have a face. I wouldn't have a comedy character in the role,
Yeah, because
but
Santino sucks, I think.
yeah, his the humor doesn't work in this because he doesn't have the wrestler. So Santino's humor worked in WWE because so many wrestlers were over. And when I say over, I'm talking about real genuine stars to work with. He doesn't have that here. So when he mispronounces, Brian Myers' name, like who cares?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't hit the same way. Um, but yeah, he was brought on to be the authority figure. Scott got himself back on TV, wouldn't leave TV. Scott was all over TV. I mean, when I was doing the Cool Factor, TW's always like, it's the new star of the show.
Yeah.
This guy's, he's all over the place.
Yeah. So to put a bow on all the TNA talk, we've gone 45 minutes on TNA. So if you're not a TNA fan and you come here for some AEW talk or some WWE talk, we're gonna get to that in a little bit. But I want to get to the chat first. But to put a bow on the TNA stuff, now we're just getting. I think Scott's side, and I don't know if it's coming from him or not, if it's coming from people close to him. I think we've kind of heard from that side, and I think this is probably the first time that we've been hearing a little bit from the other side. Like here's the other side of the story, and that's why we wanted to present that. BQ and I don't know Scott. I do have I know people that know him and they love him and he's awesome. But it just didn't work out with Anthem, and it's not, the relationship wasn't all rainbows and butterflies, and a lot of stuff that's been presented might have been misrepresented. And so we're just trying to get the other side of the story out because BQ just kind of heard all this news, and so we've offered him this platform to be able to do that. So thank you for telling us all this stuff. But like when BQ says like I'm hearing this, BQ is not saying this is what I think of Scott D'Amore. That's not what's happening, and that's not what's happening with me. This is just what he's been hearing from people with inside TNA that's getting that Anthem side out there.
And there's a little more I'll get into when I review Impact here. Creatively, there's a couple of things I'll throw in there. Some other gems.
Yeah. So everybody go to find Negative BQ on YouTube and check out the Impact Lounge. Join the Impact Lounge Facebook group. I'm in there. We're always in there talking shit, and that's where a lot of this news actually originated. Was because BQ was dropping bombs in the middle of the night. I woke up at 5 a.m. I was like, "Damn, BQ, what the hell's going on?"
Yeah. All right, so I hope you guys dug that conversation with my guy Mike Gilbert, and I hope it opened some eyes a little bit and it gave you guys a different perspective. You know, like when it comes to Scott D'Amore, I was never his biggest fan on screen. I always say I don't like Scott on screen. What he's doing behind the scenes, I do like and I do respect. But I think what I've really learned is that although he did have a good relationship with a lot of people and a really good relationship with a lot of the wrestlers, I think his performance was kind of masked by the fact that people liked him. I, I truly do feel, based on multiple conversations, that he took credit or allowed the perception to be out there that he was responsible for everything. He was comfortable taking credit for everything. So that's why us as fans, when they got rid of him, we're like, what are you doing? The company's going to fall apart. And hopefully there's going to be some other news outlets and news sources that share some of this information going forward. Because right now we get one side of it, and it's the Dave Meltzer, the Mike Johnsons talking to the people who are gone. You know what I'm saying? The anthem side is not really getting out there. Uh, but this group here, where I said, I criticized them. I said, "Yo, this management team, this ownership group is faceless. We need to know who they are, what they look like. I could walk past them on a street. I mean, we have an idea what they look like, but I was like, I could walk past them on the street, wouldn't know it was them. But now I'm realizing that's done by design. They truly want it to be about the wrestlers. They want to create an atmosphere that's just more professional. Uh, they want the show to look like a television show. It's not to say Scott Demore didn't care about the production quality, but we saw the production quality under Scott for a very long time look like shit for years, multiple years. So he's the dude in charge, right? I know there's like ownership and all that, but it's kind of like watching a sports franchise. There might be an owner, but the owner has to let the general manager and the head coach cook. They're not going to sit here and just uh, overstep the people they hired to put in this, to that they put in a certain position to succeed. Now, after a while, if that team you're talking about is stagnant and the changes aren't being made and they're not getting rid of the personnel that they need to get rid of, then you got to make that move and you got to make those hard decisions. I don't think Scott made the hard decisions. I said on a lot of reviews, I said, I know for a fact there's people back there that are not good at what they do, and they're still there. So Scott was not making those hard decisions. He was not making those firings. That's why you're seeing people drop like flies after Scott was let go, because you can't do it all at once, right? But you're seeing them drop like flies because Scott wasn't removing those people. And again, us as fans, we can only go with the information that we've received, and we're just thinking to ourselves, this company's falling apart, but that's not the case. They're actually improving. Anthem was much more committed to this looking like a legitimate wrestling television show than we gave it credit for. But the guy that they put in charge was not taking the necessary steps to make it happen. I'm sure that Scott wanted the show to look good, but he didn't want it enough because it continued to look like crap for a long time. So I think I said this on the podcast with Mike there, but because I did this last night, we're going to deal with these venues for the rest of the year, and I do think come 2025 we're going to see an uptick in the look and the venue. It sucks because we went into 2024 saying, hey, they're going to up the production value, right? They're going to up the production quality. We were excited about that, and then it didn't really happen. And now I'm kind of telling you it may not happen this year. It may be next year. And these rumors about, hey, Scott wanted the company to be bigger. Scott was asking for money. Like, they already knew they were getting rid of Scott. That's why they were telling him no. It wasn't that they don't want to spend. They're spending now. Trust me, they are spending now. They are spending the money. And I think you saw with with the signings, some of the signings, the Hammerstones and stuff like that. You're like, okay, well they are spending a little bit. But some people had asked me about Giselle Shaw, if how did that go down, right? Because she was off TV for a long time. One of the what websites reported that she was hurt. I don't know if that's true or not, but she was clearly off TV for a long time. So we're sitting here like, okay, is she coming back? We know she has the relationship with Scott, and I'm under the impression she wasn't going to or didn't want to, or that it was a very rocky situation. They had to convince her to return. So I think what you see with Gail Kim on screen is kind of mirroring real life a little bit. Because creatively it was like Gail Kim was trying to convince her to come back. And I just wouldn't be shocked if that wasn't pretty accurate to what happened. I think they found I don't think Giselle Shaw is going to stay once this contract is up. I if we're just using common sense, she most likely will not. But I do think what we're seeing on screen is mirroring real life a little bit. But yeah, there was she definitely. I'm under the impression she was kind of kicking and screaming, didn't really want to come back. So, um, let me get into this impact review, folks. I will get into a couple other things from my conversations as they pertain creatively to what we see on screen here. As I said at the top here, this I thought this episode was very bad. The last two episodes, I had said when I was doing my review that I thought the first hour was bad, and then it picked up for the second hour. I thought this whole episode was bad. To me, this was the worst episode of the year. I've said many times that I don't think they do good go home shows. I haven't watched a go home show in almost a year because I just always felt like they're bad. I didn't want to watch that much wrestling at once because typically the show will be on a Thursday. I don't watch it on a Thursday. I watch on a Friday or a Saturday, but then the pay per view rolls around. It's too much wrestling for me. So this time around, I said, you know what? They're doing the Hardy compound thing. I want to see it. And I'll even fucking review the show. I wish I didn't watch it. If the Hardy compound thing wasn't on it, I would not have watched this show. Uh, but let's get into it here. I'm going to go into the results. And again, some of my other conversations with TNA, I will, when it's relevant to what I'm talking about, I will bring that in as well. Because I know some of you guys probably want to know a couple other things. You don't, not, you know, you didn't want to just hear about Scott Demore and all that drama. So as I said last week, they have a formula that works, the bookend formula. I thought this episode was that on paper. When they kicked it off with Mike Santana taking on Zachary Wentz, I'm like, okay, I can dig that. And I knew the Nemeth brothers were teaming up for the first time ever in the main event. I said, okay, cool. Um, Speaking of, Tom Hannafin must have first time evered us 12 to 15 times this episode. It was 4 times alone in the main event. I'm just like, "Oh my god." So this episode for me it felt like it would not end. For me, a good episode is really easy to digest and it's over before you know it. There was a point in this episode that I was so done, and then I looked at the time and there's 30 minutes left. I forgot there was a Nemeth match 30 minutes ago. I was like, "Oh my god." So that for me, this was a painful episode. I'm sure many of you liked it, okay? Because we just all look for different things in wrestling. We want different things. We're satisfied by different things. We hate different things. We like and dislike different wrestlers. So I don't want to put that opinion on you guys like, hey, this is the worst episode I've ever seen in my life. You have to agree with me. I know a lot of you don't agree with that. For me as a fan, this was one of the worst episodes they put on since uh oddly enough, since last time the Hex was on, when they snuck attack Decay, and they had a Brian Myers versus Dirty Dango #1 contenders match for the world title, and uh, they did bad comedy to write Matt Cardona off TV. Like to me, that was one of the worst episodes in the history of the show. And even though I've said between then and now, okay, I didn't really care for this episode. I've said many times I can still usually find redeeming qualities. Like this one was really, really rough for me. On paper, I was excited for Mike Santana and Zachary Wentz, and this was probably the best part of the show. I think I think what turned me off is that they got to this point in the match where they were doing everything and selling nothing. And when I start seeing that in a match, I start getting turned off. When it just we're just gonna hit moves back and forth. No one's gonna sell jack shit. Uh, it takes me out of the game. And then with the finish, Mike Santana went for the spinning clothesline. It was like a punch to the stomach. Just this was the best part of the show. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. Tom Hannafin interviewed Mustafa Ali. Had background music that didn't fit the segment. I've said till I'm blue in the fucking face. When you put the music in the background of these segments, it removes all emotion that they're trying to get across to you. So if you're going to use music, you have to leave it silent until there's a relevant time to kind of throw it in because fits the mood of what's being said. If you just played the damn song throughout the whole thing, there's no way that it's going to line up with the words that are coming out of their mouths. I thought this took too long. I thought it was a freaking waste of time. And I usually like the Mustafa Ali stuff. Usually everything he's done, I find pretty interesting. They're trying to make this Trent Seven match that isn't that interesting. They're trying to make it interesting. They're foreshadowing that he's going to wrestle Mike Bailey, acting like he's scared of Mike Bailey. Like this dude is not scared of Mike Bailey. No one is scared of Mike Bailey. I just I don't know. I just thought it was bad. I thought it took too long. I thought it sounded the music was annoying. So again, I'm just like, okay, this wasn't very good. Then we got Marty Bell versus Masha Slamovich. You know what? This was not. I didn't mind this match here. Uh, a lot of it just being a big Hex fan. I probably give him a pretty long leash. Was the match 5 stars? No, but it was serviceable. It was a decent part of the match. They had no creative to get opponents for Masha and Lish at the pay per view at TNA Plus at Against All Odds. So they did what I said Eric Bischoff says about AEW. They have to create an excuse for a match rather than do something to build towards it. And that's all this was. Hey, we need you two to wrestle. We need you guys to cheat. We need you guys to win so that we can have opponents for the pay per view. So Marty Bell did win this thing. I was cringing listening to Tom Hannafin with his calling him Bell and K. This was the first time ever matchup, by the way. I don't know if he first time ever us in the very first match of this show. I'm sure he did because he's on a roll with that shit right now. But yeah, this was the first time ever matchup. They had the goof ref in there, and it was okay. It was okay. Then they go backside and backside. They go backstage. Zaya Brookside and Steph DeLander. These two women were just fighting 2 weeks ago. The minute the match was over, Zaya Brookside is just living life vicariously through Steph DeLander and her potential love story with PCO. Now, I've said I don't hate the story because it's just something different for PCO to do rather than walk around yelling people's names backstage, even though he's still doing that. I think I'm incapable of saying something bad about Zaya Brookside. I really like her a lot, but the acting here was very bad. We're supposed to. I'll see what happens at Against All Odds, but I mean, is Steph DeLander really considering? You know, I mean, the way this segment started, and Zaya Brookside was standing next to her, and just it's clearly the cameraman. I was like, roll tape, go. So, have you thought about what you're going to say to PCO yet? Like, it wasn't like Steph DeLander was hanging out backstage and Zaya Brookside walked up on her. They just so happened to be right next to each other. The segment starts. It came off fake. It came off bad. And I don't know. Like, I hope that they don't go on a date. I'm so worried that they're going to go on a freaking date. But she's like, I'll let him know tomorrow against all odds. Like, she really doesn't know how she feels. She in the storyline was trying to use her sexuality to distract PCO in a match. PCO ended up falling in love with her, gave her a black rose and a card, and now maybe they're an item. And Zaya Brookside's real excited about it. I do think her role in this is kind of cute, kind of funny, but um, this just wasn't good. I'm not against the angle. It just wasn't good. The microphone sounded very bad. It was echoey. AJ Francis and Rich Swann came. They stole the rose. We see PCO just so happen to fucking walk by. Like what PCO just walks the halls of and they didn't see him. They didn't see that he was right there. I mean, just the whole thing was just bad. Again, the storyline, I'm willing to see what they do, but I just thought it was bad. And then AJ Francis and Rich Swann come out. Gia Miller's interviewing him, and Gia Miller is improving so much. I think that this role is best for her to interview them on the ramp and get Sam Laterna to do the backstage stuff. That's what I think is best. I don't know what they're going to do or not do. Um, but AJ and Rich Swann have come out. I told you guys I will let you know a few things creatively. There's we may see a new member in first class. I don't know if they've like really approved it or not. I know what was pitched, and I'd been saying that I expect the tag team to ultimately be Rich Swann and someone else. I've said that I've said that many times. It I have asked the question. There's a possibility we're going to get a new member here for first class. I don't know when. I don't know if it'll be soon. Um, I'm not going to say if it's someone from the roster or someone who's been on this TV before, someone we haven't seen before. But I think we're going to see a new member of first class. It's not a guarantee, but I think that we are. Then PCO attacks him because uh, AJ Francis stole the black rose, and again, it's just an excuse for a match. Go back there, steal the rose. PCO is going to get mad. There's going to be a little brawl. You're going to wrestle Rich Swann. You know, I'm not mad at it necessarily though because it's for Against All Odds and not a pay per view. I can deal with some randomness for TNA Plus shows. I think you should have some randomness on those shows, but it's definitely a very like just thrown together type of thing. Danny Luza takes on Tasha Steeles, and this match would not end. This took forever, and they're trying to tell the story that Spitfire is going back to basics. What basics? Like I don't know that they've even communicated. They haven't even tagged up, but a few months. They won the titles, yes, but they've pretty much lost every other time they're in the ring. Danny Luna hits the Luza landing, and Lars Fredrickson, who's is a pretty good talker, they can benefit from him. And Jobby Threat, they are celebrating like they just won the titles. And I don't know that the fans cared. It was pretty quiet for this match, but it just wouldn't end. Like this match just wouldn't fucking end. And that's how I felt about a lot of these matches. I was like, they're not ending. Then Joe Hendry is backstage. He's being interviewed. I thought Gia did a good job here as well. Of all people, Ace Steel walks up. And I'm okay with Ace Steel being on screen. I think he'd be a great authority figure, to be honest with you. But it was so random. And he now speaks for Joe Hendry, who doesn't need anyone to speak for him. Or at least he did in this case, because Frankie Kazarian just so happens to walk up, and then it's an excuse for a match, and we're getting a match at Against All Odds. And again, random matches are okay for TNA Plus. Doesn't mean it's like good television, but it's okay to do it. And I do feel that Ace Steel would be a better authority figure. I was mentioning when talking with Mike there that Santino was brought in to get Scott D'Amore off TV. Scott didn't want to leave TV. Scott likes to get himself over on TV. He wants to be the star of the show. That's how it came off, at least. So I don't know what the thinking was to bring Santino in, though. That is one that's completely off the wall to me. But I think Ace Steel would be great in that spot. I always talk about the production values of the show. I said last week looked good. This one didn't look good again, and I stand by what I said. That no two episodes in a row look the same. Whether good, whether bad, they just don't. I thought this was going to be. Sorry, I hit my mic there. I thought this was going to be the exception. That it was going to be a better show. It wasn't. or better editing job, I should say. The GM Miller stuff is starting to look better backstage, though. The shadows aren't as bad. Then we got the Hardy compound thing, guys. I wanted to like this. I did my best to not take it so seriously and to allow myself to be entertained. I promise you I did. I did not go into it thinking I wasn't gonna like it. I've been looking forward to it. My concern was that it was gonna be the TNA version of Home Alone, which it kind of was, kind of wasn't. The final deletion was the one that hit. The one that they did with Decay at Bound for Glory, that was also a match that worked. Everything else has been like we watch it one time and we move on. Tag Team Apocalypto, Deleter Decay. I'm trying to think what else there was. They were like they were okay, but they've never captured what the final deletion was. The gimmick for Broken Matt Hardy progressively got. I don't want to call it bad comedy because um, it's silly comedy. It's not bad comedy because it is funny, but it just got progressively more silly after starting off as kind of a darker character. Uh, but as they continue to peel the layers and show different sides of him, it just got goofy. So I had a good feeling this was going to be goofy. I thought the acting was absolutely horrible by everyone involved. I'm not talking about the kids because they're kids, but the wrestlers were horrible. The best actor in this was Rebby Sky, who looks phenomenal. I remember her being very, very thin, and then she had Maxwell, and she's Puerto Rican, so I thought she was going to be thicker. Uh, and she's very thin right now, very slim, and uh, I'm a colored hair guy, so she looks incredible. But just her like brief interaction with Alicia, her acting was good. It was believable. It was natural. But I mean, Moose, Brian Myers, Eddie Edwards, Alicia. I don't know if they were trying to be cheesy on purpose, but I don't think you're bringing in new fans with this one. I know a lot of you guys did like it. I saw enough social media reaction. I saw enough in the Facebook and the Impact Lounge engagement group on Facebook. I saw enough reactions from people to know that a lot of people liked this. I knew it was one of those things you either loved or hated, though. I was already told that going into it. I just didn't like it. I thought the Brian Myers part took forever. The leg drop was kind of funny. The Moose and Matt Hardy stuff could have been good, but just Moose's acting was very bad. Alicia's acting was very bad, and I try never to say anything bad about Alicia Edwards. She's never been a great actress. It was highlighted here with with how good Rebby Hardy is. The Eddie Edwards stuff was okay. I mean, his acting wasn't horrible. I did laugh when he said, "Hey, it's a trap. We need to go through the back." And then they start off, and Matt's like, "Why did you guys come through the back?" Like that kind of popped me a little bit. But I knew you gonna like this because people were saying online how good the Brian Myers part was, and I'm watching the Brian Myers part, and I'm waiting for it to get good. And when it didn't for me, I was like, I'm not gonna like this. I just at that point, I thought the Lake of Reincarnation thing with Moose was okay. I thought that was a nice little bit of humor, but um, I think it was a bunch of non-funny people trying to be funny, and I just don't think that's a good formula for television. I don't know what I was expecting from this. I don't know that the Hardy compound stuff for me as a fan is good anymore. I think I'll always have interest in it though. Like if they were gonna do another one of these, I'll watch it. I'm definitely gonna watch it. You're gonna get my eyeballs. It's not gonna be one of those things where I said, "Oh, these aren't good. I'm not gonna watch." I'm always gonna have interest in what the hell crazy shit they're gonna do. And they did come up with some some crazy ideas, and there were some funny moments. I don't want to sit here and be like, "Yo, this was so bad." Again, because again, I know a lot of you guys liked it, so I'm not trying to tell you it was bad. I'm trying to tell you I thought it was bad. The way it was explained to me is that the TNA fans will like it, the non-TNA fans don't. Maybe I'm a closet non-TNA fan because it just didn't do it for me. I wouldn't watch it a second time. I thought it did have some redeeming qualities, but I did not like it to the extent that most of you did. A couple laughs here or there, but I couldn't get over the bad acting because there was bad acting on the show leading up to it. There's bad acting from Steph Delander. There's you know kind of bad acting from Ace Steel. Like he was okay. Uh, just trying to think what else happened on the show. I just didn't like it, folks. I'm sorry. I wanted to. I really truly did. Maybe I will watch it a second time. Maybe just to try to appreciate it better. I thought the little nicknames for the kids were good, but they chopped this stuff up and put it on Twitter, and it was destroyed because you're doing this stuff out of context, and when you're seeing Alicia potentially getting her head chopped off, and you don't really watch TNA, you're like, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? This is what they're doing on TNA right now. So I don't know, man. I'm sorry. I feel the need to apologize to you guys because I would imagine the majority of you guys liked it. I didn't. Then we got Ash by Awful Sauce versus Jada Stone. Of course, everyone on TNA signed Jada Stone. I thought Jada Stone was very athletic. I didn't think her work was very good. I thought her work was very sloppy, but she could do some things athletically that most women don't do. She had some personality. So is that someone you can keep an eye on for the future? Yeah, perhaps. I've been told that Gail Kim is working very hard right now to scout and to fix the knockout division. I think the standard for TNA is higher. I'm always talking about, well, NWA brings these women in all the time, and they bring in some good girls too, man. Like um, Taylor Rising, with they had her on TNA, they just had her job. Like she's very, very good. There's good women out there, but I think with Gail, I think she takes her time with this kind of thing. I think it's a little too slow because we're not seeing anybody. We're not seeing anything. The division has been hurting all year, and we haven't had a single new knockout outside of Ash by Awful Sauce and Zaya Brookside, King of the Rubber or Queen of the Rubber match. But they came in January. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think this girl Jada Stone is ready for television. I thought her work was pretty bad, but she has potential. She has a lot of potential. Some of the shit she was doing, again, women don't do. So you can probably work with someone like that. She did have a Tron entrance with a generic song, though. Ash by Awful Sauce just again did not look very good here. Probably the last thing I'm going to tell you guys tonight. So Artie Evans was I don't want to say released because I guess he left on his own. He was in charge of the Ash by Awful Sauce segments. I think we're going to see some changes in Ash's gimmick here going forward because I think the company is aware it's not connecting, and where they're finding it's not connecting is that I said this from day one that when she debuted that the Iceman cannot be the gimmick. He has become the gimmick. He is overshadowing her. He's doing all the talking. She's doing no talking. And the problem is, for most fans, she's not backing it up in the ring. I think it would just be different if he was doing all this talking and then she got out there and was having these great matches, these dominant matches, showing off athleticism, but it just hasn't been that way. You know, I mean, she had a match with Zaya Brookside. It was one of the worst knockouts matches in years. They had three of them, of course, because Zaya's Queen of the Rubber match. I thought 2 were okay. There's only one that was really bad. Um, but they're aware she's not connecting, but they do feel it's because the personal concierge character is too overbearing and it's too much, and it is. I think a lot of you would agree with that. I think you would agree that he is the gimmick. But I said it from the very first interview that they did with Gia Miller backstage. They have to be careful that he does not become the gimmick. That is 100% what has happened, and the again, this was already Evans' baby. He's gone. As I said in the podcast with Mike, everybody from Scott D'Amore down to Penzer is gone because they weren't good or they didn't do a good job. Not to say they're maybe not capable of being good, but they were not meeting the standards. This wasn't let's just get rid of a bunch of people, a bunch of Scott's friends. Like they got rid of people that weren't delivering. And that's what I wanted to see. As me as a fan, I wanted to see that. I don't know about a lot of you guys, but I kept saying, get rid of people who aren't doing a good job. You have to make hard decisions when you're in charge. My fucking dad fired I used to work for my dad when I was 18, 19. I watched him. I wasn't in there for it, but I was in the next room. He fired his best friend because she wasn't delivering. My dad traditionally has hired he'll take his best employees, and if they have family members who need jobs, he'll find jobs for them. And even if it's like his account, like he would have like his accountant's sister and make her put her in housekeeping or something like that. Like he would find stuff for family members to do, but I still would see him fire some of those family members, like just because they're working with their brother and sister there, and it's just this big happy family. Like he was still getting rid of people who weren't working out. My dad fired me at one point when I was 19, and it wasn't it was that's a different story. It wasn't performance related. It was like I'm not bailing you out with a job anymore. Figure out your life, and that's the story how I joined the military. But like my own dad got rid of me at one point. Like you have to make tough decisions, and the tough decisions were not being made. So that's why they're all happening now. And there's going to be more. You guys are going to see. So I'm not bullshitting you. There's going to be more changes. I don't know if it means on-screen characters. I have no idea. Off-screen people, I have no idea whatsoever. But there's going to be more changes. But RD Evans, this was your baby, Ash by Elegance. It wasn't connecting. Like, do 2 and 2. Yes, he probably left on his own, but do 2 and 2. If they're letting the dude go, letting them know they're not happy with him, and now I'm telling you, hey, this was the main thing he was working on, and most fans don't like it. You feel me on that? So we will see if Ash by Awful Sauce, if that improves. She did the rarefied air. They barely show the move because she probably missed it. So we just need that whole gimmick to be better because we know she's gonna wrestle freaking um, Jordan Grace. I have a feeling it'll be a 3-way at Slammiversary. I don't know if Tatum Paxley is going to be involved. I don't know if she shows up against all odds tonight. That's who they're kind of teasing. And I know I told you guys before that there were no plans for anyone from NXT to come up, but shit, I mean, as you're watching the episodes, as you're watching NXT, it's kind of like, there probably is someone coming. So, things change. I made that very clear. Do not tell me I contradicted myself. Do not say I gave bad information. I just told you guys what I was told at one point, that it could also change by the time Against All Odds rolled around. Jonathan Gresham talks backstage. This was bad. It wasn't bad. His fake heel laughing was bad. I don't know why heels do that. That never sounds good. Unless you're Jake the Snake Roberts, it's pretty difficult to pull off. The rest of it, the rest of the content of what he was saying was, well, he's fine. He says, I like you. You make me laugh. I thought I thought the promo was okay. It was just I couldn't get around the stupid laughing. Um, I mean, on Twitter, TNA put it's Jonathan Gresham versus Salami Calorie Ham's immune system. Just silly. Then we got Jordan Grace talking about against all odds, and this kind of let us know that we're probably getting someone from outside the company because she said, "I don't care what company you're in." She listed everybody, even MLW, except AEW. I thought that was pretty funny, and that was probably done on purpose. And then the main event, which was another first time ever matchup. Um, speaking of first time ever, they did announce that the Hex is going to take on uh, the Militia. Someone on YouTube I saw said Alicia and Masha should be the Militia. Again, that was another okay backstage segment. That was from earlier. I glossed over that part. But Nick Nemeth and Ryan Nemeth, they come out and Nick is I mean Ryan is not even on the level in any way of Nick Nemeth. Like when they came out, it looked like Bring Your Brother to Work Day. The way the entrance came off. Now, I like Ryan Nemeth. I'm just stating that together, Nick is the much bigger star, and it's not even freaking close. But I hope that Ryan gets the rub here a little bit because I think he's going to be around a lot longer than Nick in TNA. They take on Chris Bay and Ace Austin. The crowd was pretty dead by this point. I don't want to speak about the people there. I think there just wasn't a lot of people there. I don't think it was about them sitting on their hands. I just don't think they marketed and promoted very well in that area. I wanted to like this match. I was looking forward to this first time ever matchup, and they're teaming for the first time ever, and then they're gonna wrestle for the first time ever at Against All Odds, and then also Broken Matt for the first time ever is gonna take on Moose. Even fucking Matt Raywall was talking about first time ever. He did it 2 or 3 times too. I'm just like these motherfuckers with their terminology and a kick out. This match again, just like some of the others, took forever. That's why I was saying this episode felt like it was never going to end. The match was slow. They each got a hot tag in, but it was. I thought Ace and Bay when they took on each other the previous week, I thought that was really slow. That wasn't what I expected. But we had two babyface teams taking each other on. I just thought it was slow. I thought it was like stuck in second gear the entire time, and I wasn't into it. I wasn't excited. Like I fell asleep. I legitimately fell asleep a couple times watching a match. By that I mean I nodded off, woke myself back up. I thought it was a very big time disappointment. This did not satisfy me like I had hoped it would. I like the finishing sequence though, um, where Ryan Nemeth hits the flatliner, and then Nick Nemeth hits the danger zone, which is pretty much a reverse flatliner. So I like the combo move. If that's their finisher, I'm here for it. I can dig it. I thought that they should have been wrestling for the titles at Slammiversary. I thought you should have really leaned into. They did lean into the fact that they were teaming for the first time ever. But I mean, everything's for the first time ever on this show. Everything. So why does this mean anything? So I thought the match was disappointing. I I, I think it's very difficult to do babyface versus babyface match because everyone has to get their shit in. It has to look competitive. Everyone's got to get along, or then all of a sudden you're creating brand new angles that you don't really want to create. So it just didn't do. This just did not hit for me. Like this just was not good. I'll give maybe Masha versus Marty Bell as okay, but just nothing on this show did it. Everything took forever. The acting was bad. The promos were bad. I just don't think this company knows how to do a go home show. And I've said it so many times over the years that that's just what I truly believe. It's not like I watched two bad go home shows in a row. Like, yo, they don't know how to do a go home show. Like, they really struggle with it. because you have to find a balance of like getting people excited for the pay-per-view, but not giving away too much of the pay-per-view. So I'm not saying it's the easiest thing to do in the world, but it is not their strong point. Um, I don't want to say if I were them because I don't know what their contract situations look like. I would do the monthly specials instead of the television show. Like I would do it live on Thursday instead of the show. But I think their overseas contracts do require them to put out a monthly show. So I think that's what it is. But um, well, I guess that won't matter because you still got a go home show the week before. Like there's always going to be a go home show. It doesn't matter what when you show the damn TNA Plus show. But I don't want to keep repeating myself. This was not good to me. I wish I did not watch the episode. I'm glad I watched the Hardy stuff because I had interest in it, but the other stuff I really could have done without. So I apologize again. If you still stuck through this and you hate my negative reviews, and I'm sorry. I gave you an out when I started the podcast. I said I don't have much to say good about this, but I'm going to review it anyway. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to check out Against All Odds. I've heard that there's some questionable booking going on. I think I did see a spoiler here as I was recording. I think Ted and Paxley did show up, which how predictable can you be? My God, I what I thought was going to happen was that they were going to have someone challenge her, maybe making their debut, or someone from outside the company, or someone within a company, and then there was going to be a post match angle with Ted and Paxley and Ash by Alpha Sauce. That's what I thought they were going to do. Apparently, she answered the open challenge, so uh, looked like someone said it was a fart in church. Probably because the the TNA fans built that up to be something that it wasn't. Again, they were fantasy booking The Undertaker and AJ Styles and Vince McMahon himself. They fantasy booked every name in that company, and I kept saying, keep your expectations low, keep them low. Uh, but it's good that someone from NXT did show up. But I mean, they're giving you the bottom of the barrel. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not giving you uh, the top tier talent. So I would just continue to keep expectations low regarding this partnership as far as the talent exchange that we're getting on TNA. So that's going to do it for me, folks. Hope you at least enjoyed the part with Mike where I'm just talking about some backstage stuff. If you got more questions for me, if stuff you want to know, you're always welcome to the Impact Lounge engagement group. You're welcome to DM me on Twitter. For those of you who are Facebook friends of mine, a couple of you follow me on Instagram. It's more of a personal page. I'll ask whatever you want me to ask. No, let me not say that. I will let you know if I'm going to ask it because there's certain questions I know I can't ask, but I'll do my best to answer some of the things you want to hear answered. So that's it for me, folks. I'm your boy, BQ. I will talk to you when we're talking Against All Odds. I'm out. Peace.